Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining me again for another mindful health interview. I'm excited about today's show. We're going to be speaking with Dante, who's a teacher in the inner city, and we're going to be talking about how he navigates mental health amongst his students. So I'm really excited for this talk today and this interview. Hey, Halo Potato, welcome. Glazzabretta, welcome. Thanks for joining me. So I'm just going to invite my guest, and I'm really looking forward to our guest today. Let's see. I guess there's a new invite request. Invite. Let's see. Welcome everybody. Welcome. Just setting up here. Instagram is always funny. Oh, they've added questions. Invite. Here we go. Dante. There we go. All set up. How's everybody doing today? There he is.
I'm trying to connect. I'm coming in.
The man of the hour.
There. Okay.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, welcome. Good. How are you? How's it going?
It's been one heck of a year. Let's just say that.
One heck of a year. Yes, good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today about navigating mental health amongst students and young ones and youth.
It's very tough. Yes, I'm more than happy to come on and talk with you, Jen. Thanks.
Thanks. So Dante, you're a teacher in the inner city. What city are we?
Buffalo. Yes, I'm in the
Buffalo
inner
city.
Buffalo.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're teaching what kind of age groups are we looking at here?
We're anywhere between 14 and 18 are the students that I try to navigate, because I have a couple of classes that are freshman and sophomore classes, and then I also have the juniors and seniors as well. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So that's a lot of energy, that age group.
Oh, it is. Believe me. I mean, for a decade and a half, I've been trying to navigate that age group in the inner city. So it's normal to me now. So.
And how long have you been teaching for?
About 15 years. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
do you still love it as much as you did when you first started?
I do. There's some things that have changed. There's some things that are a little bit different now than there were. Obviously, there's the infusion of so much more technological advances in the classroom, outside of the classroom, flipping classrooms. There's so many other different things that it's evolving. And, you know, when I started out, I was writing on a chalkboard. Now I'm writing on a whiteboard, now a smartboard. So
right.
The evolution is definitely there. So.
Yeah. So now I wanted to ask you a few questions because, I mean, we will probably focus on, you know, a little bit of the pandemic and how that's changed teaching for you and the scope of teaching with your students and how they have, you know, learned to navigate that themselves. But I wonder if you could go back a little bit to when you were first a teacher and talk about, so, you know, we have this whole movement and there's a misconception that the mental health movement is brand new. And my argument is that it's always existed. It just hasn't been as prevalent. And I think the category and the age groups who have been misrepresented or underrepresented or not as heard have been the children and the youth. I think people have this idea that when you're a kid, you have no responsibility and you have no worries and no stress. And, you know, we often look at adults dealing with stress and anxiety and mental health, but we don't often look at the children. And so I wonder how you navigated that, or were you aware of that as much as you are today when you first started teaching?
Well, when I first started, remember back in the day, they had No Child Left Behind. So a lot of the students, their mental preparation for class were, well, I could do what I want. I'm still going to pass. They're still going to move me on. But the infusion, like I said, of the technology over the years from when I started until now, not just the technology in the classroom. You're talking about Twitter, you're talking about Instagram, you're talking about Facebook. That evolving in and of itself, where students are judged based on their follower count, they're judged based on what they post or judged on that. So that those outside influences that cause a lot of stress in adults even are brought about at a very young age with the kids. And I've seen that from then till now. My biggest difference that I've seen from then until now with some of the students is before they either had respect for the teacher or had respect for the work. And that gets fostered at a very young age, especially in the household. Sure. Now it seems majority of the students, if you say, okay, if you don't do this work or you don't get this, you're not going to understand the material and your grade will suffer. They don't care. Like, listen, I don't want to learn this. This is not immediate return. And that's what a lot of those social media sites have done. It's immediate return on your investment. Now, school's a different factor. It's a build up of comprehension over a bunch of years. Kids don't get that immediate return, so they don't see, why should I work for this? And it's becoming more and more prevalent as the years go on.
How do you find the support laid out in, say, 15 years ago for kids who were under stress and experiencing anxiety and things like that? And were they more open? Are they more open now about talking about stress and anxiety than they were 15 years ago, the kids in your class?
They are definitely more open now to discuss a lot of the things, but then there are also kids, it's everything's on a bell curve, really. So you have a lot of the kids that are willing to talk about it, but then there are kids that are completely shut off from talking about it because they're exhausted from talking about it. Then you have some kids that use that as a crutch, so to speak, where they're okay, they're feeling okay, they're not overwhelmed, they're not stressed, but they know that if they say they're stressed, they may get an extension on this work. They may get a forgiveness on this work. So it's tough to try to navigate. And back when I was teaching, even before I was teaching, when I was going to school, I know we're going back to the, before we had electricity, but the point is, there wasn't as many categories as there are today. So when I was going to school, if there was a kid who was stressed, oh, he'll be fine, or he'll do this, or he'll do that. Now because they have the categories, you're able to directly assist some of the kids, especially for me, from 15 years ago to now. We used to have like 3 counselors in the school. Now in the school that I'm in, we have 12, and we have social workers also in the school. So it's easier. Kids can seek help if they're not getting proper help that they need.
There's a lot more resources today.
Absolutely, no question.
Yeah. I wonder how the dynamics of the parents have changed with the changes. How's that? Because I'm sure you deal with a lot of parents too. It's sort of a double-edged sword. You're dealing with the kids and the parents and the staff and
It is a little different with the parents today that the parents that I had to deal with over the years, because a lot of parents, and I don't mean to categorize every parent into one category. I'm just saying a lot of parents that I've dealt with, they'll hand the kid a tablet or buy the kid a phone and be like, okay, I'm busy with what I have to take care of to try to put a roof over your head, try to put meals, and do all this other stuff. You go play or go talk to your friends. So students that I teach are more reliant on their friends than they are their parents. And that communication, as far as the school aspect goes, doesn't really go. What I tell the student and what the student relates to the parent is different. And the shift that's happened, as far as from the teacher's perspective, is that if a student messed up, the teacher and the parent would try to work together to try to see, and that happens sometimes, but they would try to see what was going on. But now it's like flipped, where you're attacking my child. You're at fault. Why aren't they learning? It's your fault. You have to correct this. Da, da, da. And when you have that dynamic of the teacher and the parent working together, the kid benefits from that. And I don't know why there's this shift that's happening where the teacher gets blamed for a lot of things. And I'm coming at this as a parent and a teacher. So
because you've got a couple of kids, right?
Yeah, I have 3 littles. 2 of them are in school right now on elementary level. So it's difficult, I know. Yeah.
How has it changed things with the pandemic amongst the staff? You talked about communication there for a minute, between the parents and yourself as a teacher. How has that changed, and how has it changed amongst the staff? How has the communication been with other teachers and co-facilitators?
Well, we have to even communicate even more sidebar from the class itself. So it is very difficult to try to collaborate certain things. You're not allowed to meet on a certain basis. We'd have obviously a face-to-face meeting. You can get 10 times more stuff done than you could over a Zoom meeting or over a Teams call or anything like that. So the communication has to be paramount in that respect. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes because the teachers, when they leave school, they have their own lives as well. They have their children, their families, and they have to take care of that. So trying to navigate that is very tough. So you have constant emails, you have constant text messages, you have the app called Seesaw where you can communicate with the students and the teachers. We have our Teams meetings. So there's a lot of different things that go in with the staff. Majority of the staff actually enjoy the virtual learning experience, because what
Mm.
has gone down is the behavioral issue. Now, I teach in the inner city, so behavioral issues, classroom management were my forte. Now, those are taken off the table because there's no kids in the classroom. So
Right.
that whole dynamic happening where it's tough for me to read. Like, let's just say this: if you turned your camera off right now, and I'm teaching you something, I can't read your body language if you know it, if you don't know it, if you have a question. Because there's kids that will ask questions without even raising their hands. You can just look at them, and they're like, they don't want to feel silly in front of their students. But then there's the others that will email you constantly because they don't have that face to face. They're nervous to talk to the teacher. So they will constantly email you and you constantly email them back. And then you're fostering that communication. So there's a
Right.
bunch of different things that play with that. But the staff, by and large, they like sitting at home and delivering instruction to an empty screen sometimes. So it's
I
actually pretty
bet. I
funny that way.
bet. Now, when you say the behavioral management was your forte, I wonder if you could dive a little bit more into that, because
Yeah.
you are very charismatic, and I'm sure that that goes over really well with a lot of students. And I'm sure you have a way about you that just that is able to reach them at a different level. And you probably use a little bit of comedy and just
Oh, God.
I mean, full disclosure, we Dante and I know each other already,
Yeah.
so I know his personality and great personality. And so I know that he connects really well with other people. So how does
Thank
that
you.
come into play with navigating sort of, because at that age, I mean, high schoolers age 14 to 18, I mean, you've got a little bit of the tudes going on, a little bit of attitudes, and so how do you manage that?
Well, I'll say that number one, coming from an athletic background, I connect with the athletes immediately because
Sure.
if I could see that they have a drive toward a sport, I can manifest that drive toward education. That's number one. Number two, I, I I teach in the inner city. I'm a 6'5" Caucasian male. When I walk in there,
What?
one of the first things I ask one of the first things that I ask them is I say, listen, if I wasn't a teacher, what would you think I was? Well, first of all, they think I'm the gym teacher because that makes me laugh all the time. I'm walking to a math
Right.
class. They're like, what are you doing here, you avatar? But I go in there and they're like, well, if I didn't have this job, what would you think I have? And I teach in the inner city. They say, well, we thought you were a cop. Now you take teacher off the
Mm.
board, you put a cop in there due to the recent events going back years now. I'm
Yeah.
already fighting an uphill battle. So what
Sure.
do? I infuse, like you said, I infuse comedy into it. From day one, I try to make them laugh. I try to be like the biggest goofball in the world, so I don't look as imposing or intimidating in the class.
Sure.
And that I always had the mantra: if you can get people to laugh together, you can get people to get serious together. So um, you're trying to read the room, trying to read the kids, trying to talk to them. You could tell when a kid doesn't want to talk in class. So that student, I would
Mm.
walk up next to, I would quietly ask them a question if they were doing it. The more flamboyant you are and the more boisterous you are in my class, the more I'm going to roast you because I know you're used to doing that. And the other kids
Yeah.
kind of get a laugh out of it, but it's never a mean-spirited dig. It's always, I will
Sure.
make fun of myself. I'll be more self-deprecating than I am to any student. But that atmosphere of loose, it's fun. I make more mistakes than them on the board on purpose because I say, oh, okay, all right, I messed that up. Thanks for correcting me. Because if they know that I'm more comfortable to make mistakes, they're more comfortable to take risks. So I'm able to do that and make that transfer. So, but the first day of class, once they see me in there, they're like, who the heck is this? You know what I mean? Like, and so I have to try to break down a few barriers myself in order to try to reach the students that I have.
That's so great about what you said about making mistakes and putting that out there as
Mm-hmm.
just sort of like an open space and an opportunity to accept that, there's no need for perfection. And I
Never,
want to
no.
talk about that a little bit more, because I find that, like, do you find with the inflection of social media now that students have this greater imposition of this need to be perfect and to do things perfectly? And I don't know if that's different in your, like you said, you're in the inner city. I don't know if that's different in your area or if that's
Yeah.
students across the board. How does that strive for perfection come into play in the classroom? Because that's a really good strategy to use
Well,
with, showing them that mistakes are okay.
oh yeah, well, first of all, it's a math. I teach math, so everyone already hates it. It's like walking into a dentist office. Nobody wants to be there. They
Yeah.
never want to be there. So at an early age, a lot of the students that I get, when they finally get to me, they already hate math. They despise it.
Mm.
I don't like it. I'm not good at it. And I said, why do you think you're not good at it? And they said, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. I go, well, listen, here's the deal. In math, it's different than any other topic, as you know, because there's 17 different roads I can take to get to that answer. It's finding a path you enjoy or a path you're comfortable with. We're going to go down that path together. So that is the first thing that I say. And because of, high school is going to be high school. We know this. We've lived through it where, there's the cool kids, and I was always sitting at the honors kids table, and I was like, okay, oh, somebody walked by, that's cool. Any 90s flick you want to turn on that had Freddie Prinze Jr., you'll know about what we had to go through. So that, I get that in that respect of trying to be perfect. They try to be perfect. But by the time they get to me, they're so deflated from people knocking them down. You can't do math, you can't do this, you can't do that. I almost have to build the foundation in my class early on. But I always tell them, it's okay. You make a mistake in here. I'm going to make the most mistakes on anybody in this class the whole year. The problem is, the thing is, are you going to learn from those and move forward? Let's find a path. If you're in social studies class, a year that a battle happened, that year never changes. In this one, if I give you an algebra problem, are you going to solve algebra outside of this class? More than likely not. 90% of you, 95% of you won't. But it's the problem solving that you develop in your brain that will lead you to other areas. Any job you have is going to need a problem solver. So let's work on those. Let's hone those skills now. Let's find a path for you to get to the answer to this problem. I tell the kids all the time, BAMN, by any means necessary, from here to there. Just make sure you remember the journey to get to the answer. I will always give you the safety net of what you need. I'll give you the safety net. You find an easier pattern, fine. It might not work all the time, but you find an easier pattern to get there, then you get there. Just remember the destination.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned that bit about algebra, because we all have that same question. Why do I need to learn this? So can you please explain that to me? Because I struggle with that too. I'm doing a little bit of extra learning right now, as you know, and I'm doing some math myself. And I'm doing this math and I'm going, I am never going to use this for medicine. I'm like, why are they not teaching me, like converting, solutions? Why am I learning this algebraic expression that I'm never going to use to be a doctor? Like, it doesn't make sense. So can you explain to us why we need to learn this?
I will say this, for the majority of those people, and if you're a math teacher and you're watching this and you see this, I don't mean any disrespect, but a lot of the students aren't going to use technically. You're not going to have to solve for X, but are you going to be in a situation where you have a word problem or a scenario that you're going to have to navigate a solution from what you're given? That's basically what it is. So while you're not solving for X or solving an algebraic equation, or like I told the kids today that I was teaching Pythagorean theorem today. So what I said to them as far as the Pythagorean theorem was, are you ever going to use this? And they said, no. And I said, well, let's take a step back. Are any of you that want to be contractors? Or any of you that want to build something that you have to designate and you find a measurement of a certain thing? All right. Well, I could just measure it. Yeah, that's true. All right. By any means necessary. You're taking the mantra I gave you. I understand that. But it's the problem solving, receptors in the brain that math hone and they sharpen and they carry on to the other topics and the other subjects. That's what I try to get across. Now, I teach a class called Life Math, where it's the first day I walk in there, I say, this is the answer to that question. I'm going to teach you about taxes. I'm going to teach you about buying a house versus renting an apartment. I'm going to buy between leasing a car versus buying a car. And then I go through the whole thing, the whole gamut of things that they're going to need. So that's the course I love, because it's the juniors and seniors that I teach, because a lot of the juniors and seniors that I teach in the inner city, they're going to have to do that within a year or two of graduating. So
absolutely.
I give them that to take on. So
absolutely.
But that's the one class. But the other class, it's all about problem solving. Can you be a problem solver? Can you navigate through something that you have no idea how to get through it? Because think of that statement. Navigating through something and you have no idea how to get through it. That's your adult life.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Pretty much constant challenges. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's a really great way to look at it. And I didn't look at it that way before. So it's an example of how to be a problem solver, not necessarily really about the elements of the question,
Yes.
but more so the big picture of developing that neuroplasticity for you to
Hmm.
become a problem solver when you reach a challenge. So that's a really great way to look at that. So
Absolutely.
that's awesome. And how do you build that? You're talking a little bit about, building that trust. How do you find that you build that trust and that foundation with students when they first come in? Because like you said, you're an intimidating guy. So
Well, the first day, and I've said this before, I've actually said this on my live sometimes, and I've talked about it when people want to ask me about being a teacher and this and that. Well, there's three questions I always ask, and it's always a goofy part of it where I say, listen, um, what are the 2 days of the week that start with T? So all the kids come back at me with Tuesday and Thursday, and I say today and tomorrow. So they laugh. They're kind of like, what? This is a dad joke. Okay. So then I go,
yeah.
I go, okay. All right. Next question. What's 1 and 1? And they say, well, it's 2. And I say, no, it's 11. Come on, guys. What's going on? So the fact of me saying a dad joke, being goofy, keeping a loose atmosphere, the kids
Yeah.
feel like I become more approachable in that respect. And just like I was doing tonight, and when I was talking with you, and I referenced myself to being an avatar, and they think I'm a gym teacher, and then I make mistakes. All of that intertwined, they end up saying, "Okay, listen, this is a human being. Maybe I could relate." Because you know what? Back in the day, when I saw my teacher out at the grocery store, I'm like, "What are you doing here? You're only supposed to be at school." You know what I mean? You only live at school. I only see you there. What are you doing here? So the kids can now say, "Okay, listen, this is somebody I can relate to. He's goofy. He's trying to help us." And I try to get that across in my lessons as much as possible with the kids and say, listen, I am up here trying to make you better. That is my whole goal this year. From when you leave me, by the time I'm done, you won't need me anymore. And the first couple of classes, I'm like, what are you talking about? And you don't need me anymore. I'm like, you'll be able to do everything on your own. I'm giving you the tools necessary to work on your own. So in that respect, I don't demean them. I'm never saying, well, that's wrong. Oh my God. If it's wrong, I'm like, listen, okay, I like your thinking. Let's work through it right now. All right, let's go through
Yeah.
this. All right, now walk with me here. I never call them up to the board. They hate that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never do there's certain faux pas that kids are like, that certain teachers will do to try to either get the kid to learn it. I know that this kid over here and that kid over there, this kid needs a smack in the ass where I have to get on them and get their work done. Pardon my
Yeah.
language. And this other
Yeah.
kid needs, needs to be coddled. You can't raise your voice. You can't get too aggressive. So that dynamic of the kids, I have to read the first week.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a kid in the back of the class that's walking up and being loud and boisterous and stuff, I know that kid, more than likely, as you do, Jen, he's probably hiding something that he's embarrassed about.
Sure.
And maybe in that class. So I try to pull that kid aside and say, listen,
Yeah.
you got a lot of charisma. You're boisterous in this class. I think you and I can work together. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen, if I get you in my head, I'm going, if I get this kid, the rest will follow suit. If
Yeah.
I can get
Yeah.
him, the rest will follow suit. So then I do all positioning things different with the classroom as well. I put the smartest kids in the back. They want to sit up front, I put them in the back. Why? When a kid knows an answer, what do immediately when they're so excited? They blurt it out,
Sure.
right?
You put it. Yeah.
They're in the back of the class. That filters all the way through the front. Rather than
Sure.
sitting up front and saying it and other kids are going, what was the answer? I'm not sure what that was. You know what I mean?
Right.
So certain positioning of kids, putting a kid that may need a little bit more help next to a kid who gets it. And you learn more when you teach. So when the kid helps them
Mm.
out and they could filter off of each other. So there's a lot of different like little nuanced things that I've picked up over 15 years that will help the classroom, will help the kids. But I tell them the most useful tool you're going to have in this class is me. And they all get a laugh out of it because
Yeah.
I'm all around the room. You see me right now. I'm talking with my hands the entire time. I'm very animated. They have fun when they come in my
Well,
class.
that's an Italian thing.
It
Hey.
is a little bit, yeah. But they have fun. I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
I know everything he's talking about, and I may not get everything, but I like going to that class. It's not dreadful to go into that class
Mm.
anymore. So that's the first thing that I try to do when I try to knock down barriers.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. You mentioned a little bit about coddling, and that's a bone of contention with me, because so my thing is that so I do the podcast, and my approach to therapy is real talk.
hmm
So it's straight, no chaser. I don't sugarcoat it. Doesn't mean that it's unkind. It just means that, like, if you need to get up off of your backside and do something, I'm going to tell you you need to get up off of your backside and do something.
hmm
I don't have the approach that I'm going to say, they're there,
yeah,
because that's not helpful. It's not helpful. I mean, it sounds nice, but it's not the thing that's going to move you forward.
yeah,
And so I wonder if with this, over the last couple of years, with this spark of, mental health and taking it seriously, if we've gone too far the other spectrum, and you find that we are coddling students or youth too much, to a detriment.
yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that approach happening. I came through teaching via coaching, so I was a coach.
Mm,
So I knew that from early on that there's certain guys I could yell at that would be more
mm,
productive. But if I yell at this guy, he's going to shut down. Same thing
mm,
with teaching. If I yell at this kid or I get more aggressive with this kid,
mm.
he's going to shut down, and that's not going to. They're going to shut down. It's not going to help them at all. So if I use kid gloves, like you said, if you use kid gloves
Yeah.
on them, maybe they'll be more apt to apply
Mm,
themselves a little more in that. And I understand that. And just like anything else, what you're saying is that it can happen to anything. You
yeah.
talk about certain things in moderation. You talk about if you go toward bodybuilding, you talk to people who are bodybuilders, people that do yoga. They're like, okay, this is the right way. No, this is the right way. But you're doing bodybuilding too much, or you're doing too much yoga, or you know what I mean? It's all in moderation. So I think that approach and that belief definitely does happen where we're using too many kid gloves on these kids.
Mm,
But it's hard because you're only given the information that you've been provided. I've been given the
true.
kids' grades. I've been given what their mental status is, what their IEP is, what their 504 is. Okay. I mean, if I walk up to this kid, I had one sheet on this kid. It says if I walk within 5 feet of them, they close down because they
Mm.
don't like being around certain people. So I was like, okay. I let the co-teacher manage that student outside of class.
Yeah,
They
so
would get the necessary.
boundaries is
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
those boundaries there,
So
yeah.
it was like you said, I'm a big guy. But that all being said, I understand that there are certain people that take it too far and take it to an extent
Sure.
where you don't need kid gloves. You just know how that person's treated with kid gloves. So now you want that. And I understand that. And that'll happen anywhere. That will
Yeah.
definitely happen anywhere. And have I seen it in my class? I haven't personally done that in my class. But I have seen that in other classes where, you know what, because the classroom management part that I told you about before,
Mm.
the kids are going wild because you're letting them go wild because you're
Mm.
afraid to assert any kind of discipline in the classroom. And some of those
Right.
kids do need a lot of discipline in the classroom.
Sure, sure. Now, I remember when I was a kid, like we never talked about our feelings. Like
Mm-mm.
you would never go to a teacher and say, I feel depressed.
Yeah.
Like I just wasn't part of I guess our generation to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, sort of, if you could take me through the process of you experiencing that, if you did it all when you first started teaching, and what the process to handle that was, as opposed to, the second part of this question is opposed to now, when a child comes to you and says, I'm this, that, and the other thing. Is there a process
Oh
to
yeah.
it? Is there certain steps? Like, how does that, if you could take us to when you first started teaching to now?
There were a lot of students that I had that because of the way that I taught and the things that I did and the things that I said in class, because I made myself approachable. Kids would approach me, but it would never be during class. They would come up and approach me after class, and you could tell. I mean, I'm not a counselor. I'm not trained
Mm,
as a counselor. So I'm trained as a teacher. But
mm,
when I have a kid that comes up to me and you can just see the look on their face a lot of times. And it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. We're gonna talk with your counselor. We're gonna try to see what the crux of this position is. I'm always here available for you from an academic standpoint. If you need any, you know, extensions or you need anything like this, I would always take that at, because that was my forte. I was going to sit in my area. I was not going
Sure.
to try to go and extend myself. I'm not saying I didn't want to help the kid, but I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
qualified for that position.
Sure.
So when that happens, now, because we have so many counselors, because we have so many social workers, if a student were to approach me on that front, I have avenues I could go to seek the proper help for that student. We go to seminars, we have professional developments that talk about this, but
Right.
somebody who's clearly trained in that area versus me taking a 3-hour seminar,
Yeah.
who's better equipped to handle that situation? You know, I
Yeah.
could definitely say that, you know, I have in my classroom, I have built-in passes for those kids. And I know the kids that take those passes, like I say, okay, if you come into the class and you approach me and you say, listen, Mr. G, this is not my day. This is not my day today. I said, okay, this is not your day. You can put your head down. I'll collect the work for you. I'll get what you need, and you can take it on your way out. Okay, thank you so much. Something's happening at home. A family member got sick. Whatever the situation may be, and
Right.
the kids that take advantage of those things, I know, and I pinpoint and I email their counselors immediately. I said, listen, so-and-so was not having a great day. Could you follow up on this and let me
Yeah.
know what's going on? How am I supposed to approach that? And then and then they take it from there. And then the social worker gets involved or anything else gets involved. But that is the process and the steps that I go through. And it's been kind of universal since my teaching career has been going on, where
Hmm.
I'm not qualified to. You want to sit down and talk and have a conversation with me? You want to talk about something other than math? I am all ears. But if you're going to start diving into certain items that I'm not qualified to help you on that and to give
Sure.
you advice. Let me direct you to somebody who can help you even more than that. So
Yeah.
that's how I always do it.
Yeah. And is it sort of, do the higher ups, I guess the principal and the administration, do they give you sort of a guideline to follow
There,
of what to do, or is it sort of, are you sort of expected to just kind of figure it
well,
out,
there's a
or?
guideline. Like if I have a student, like let's say you come to my class and you're telling me that you're experiencing problems, and then you're not feeling yourself, you're kind of stressed, you're starting borderline depressed.
Sure.
I would call the parent first. That's usually my first call.
Hmm.
Along with emailing the counselor, I call the parent and I said, listen, I just want to let you know. But then what I'll do is let me retract that. I'll email the counselor because the counselor sometimes will say, don't contact the parent. This is the kind
Sure.
of school I
It
teach
depends.
in.
It depends on the
Yeah,
situation.
this
Yeah.
is, so
Sure.
I'll say, okay, I'll wait for a reply. I'll say, okay, and then when they say, did you call the parent? Then that's when I immediately do it. And I say, listen, I just want to put it out there. This is what happened in class. They're not in trouble. They're not like, I just want to let you know this is what's going on. So then
Mm.
what the student will have in front of me, well, they'll have a counselor notified, they'll have the social worker notified, they'll have the parent notified, and then I'm there. So 4 people immediately are notified that
Mm.
this student is not themselves. So what we'll start to do, we'll start to build a plan off of that. Okay,
Mm.
well, sometimes the parent will say, well, they're losing focus in class. They're kind of depressed. Well, they've been staying up till 3 a.m. playing Fortnite. Okay, that's an easy solution. You know, oh, they're
Yeah.
trying out for this new thing, and you know they're worried that they won't make it. Okay, how long is until the tryout's over? And if they make it, how long is the schedule? You know, all this other stuff. Sometimes the counselor will say, well, we can't contact the parent. Okay, so what's going on now? All right, we'll handle it in house. So for the 8 hours that the student is
Mm.
here, we could take care and foster the student. But when they
Right.
leave, it's a totally different story. So all of those things intertwined, they don't really have a set rule book. It's more of what information do you have? What could you relay to
Mm.
the counselor? And then after that, what can we do as far as from the home to the classroom? How can we take care of this student?
Hmm. And what do you find the biggest, I guess, complaint or issue is that students bring forward to you now? Do you find that they express more that they are having feelings of depression or loneliness or anxiety or stress?
Um,
What's the main one?
I think in my class itself, it's a lot of the kids, their feeling of it's it's inferiority to a degree because they're
Sure.
sitting there going, listen, I know if I don't try, I can never fail, so they don't try.
Mm.
So a lot of them, they're like, oh, I've been passed through all the time. This is what I'm doing. A lot of them try to put on a face for the entire, because they either have a reputation to uphold, they have
Mm-hmm.
a certain clique that they're hanging out with, and all that. So all of that is just it's just the mask. But then when you talk to the student one-on-one, they drop that shield and you get to talk to who the student is. Do I ever reveal that when I'm in class? Never.
Right.
So if they want to keep that persona in the class, I let that persona play out, but then I'll pull them
Yeah.
aside after the class and be like, listen, this is what I've noticed. You're getting better, but we need to kind of do this. So as far as if it's depression, if it's anxiety, if it's mental health, a lot of the things
Mm-hmm.
that I always see from a lot of my students is they don't think they're good enough. And that's what
Mm.
I only have 40 minutes to do it a day. So I try
That's
to
how
tell
long
them
the
you
class
are.
is, 40 minutes?
Yeah, they're
40
40 minutes.
minutes per
Yeah.
class, yeah.
There are block schedulings that are an hour and a half sometimes, but our
Mm.
specific school is 40 minutes. So I'm trying to empower the kids when they come into my class. Say,
Sure.
listen, you can do anything. The next class you go to, you're going to have some fun because you're going to own that class too. So
Yeah.
that's the thing that I try to do on a class to class basis. But I'd say that the feeling of inferiority with some of the kids because they don't think they're good enough.
Yeah, sure, sure. And
Yeah.
that's probably, do you find that's more because of the social media now, or do you find that that's always been there, but just exacerbated now?
So yeah, 110%. I mean, it's social media and it's the environment that they decide to surround themselves with. It's
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Where do you go for the the 23 hours and 20 minutes you're not with me? Like that's affecting what you do, what you come in with. So,
Yeah,
but the social media is definitely so high on the list for affecting what these kids like, what they think is cool, what they think is in, what they
right.
think is popular. It's so I mean, there's
Yeah,
adults that you and I know. There's adults that pay attention to social media and have that run their lives and what's important and not. How do you expect a kid who does not fully developed?
yeah,
They're going to go for it too.
yeah. Well, it was commercials for us when we were kids, right? You'd see a commercial for a toy, and you'd have to have that cool toy, and you were the cool kid if you had that toy, or those,
Absolutely.
those LA Gear shoes,
Oh my God! She brought
You
out
remember
the
LA
LA gears.
Gears?
They got lights in them. That's why I wanted them. They got lights in
Yes, yes. So I want to switch now over to the thing that's sort of affecting us all, which is the COVID, this pandemic,
them.
and how has that changed the way you teach and the way kids learn?
Okay, so there's a process that I learned when I was getting my master's degree that's called the flipped classroom. Now, for those of you that don't know what a flipped classroom is, basically when the kids go home, the homework that they do is the lesson. So you pre-record the lesson, you giving the lesson. They can rewind it, they can fast forward it. It's not in real time, so they could do as many things that they want with it to try to go over the lesson itself at home. When they come into the class, they're doing the homework. So hence the terminology of a flipped classroom. So I can
Mm-hmm.
go and help so many different kids with their work when they come in. Now, not being able to read body language at the class, not being able to have that face-to-face communication with the class, not being able to execute my, as you stated earlier, my charisma, my over personality and everything, those are taken off the table. I have to do it via voice now. We are instructed, especially in my district, that kids shouldn't put their cameras on because if I see something that's not right, I have to report it.
You have a duty to report,
So they
yeah.
take it off the table. They say, listen, you don't request the kids to turn their cameras on. Certain districts do, and I understand that. But to try to virtually teach something of a kid that comes into my class in a 10th grade class, for example, that has a third grade math level, how am I supposed to accurately develop what they need in a live lesson? Because kids are coming in at different times, kids are coming in at
Right.
different levels as they do in the classroom. But if I'm in the classroom, I can get them that hands-on approach and I can read if they're getting it. I can see who's deficient in certain areas. Now, all of that's been taken off the table. Now, the
Yeah.
benefit is what I told you before is the classroom management. There's not kids arguing, there's not kids late, there's not that back and
Sure.
forth with some of the teachers. But to try to accurately gauge how the kids are developing, basically based on the work that I give them, it's tough. It's tough to accurately grade. So there are curves put in place. There are certain protocols put in place that, okay, if you gave 20 assignments, did the kid do 15 of them? Okay, pass them then. Well, what about how they did on it? What if they failed every one of those 15 assignments? They did it. Go ahead, just pass. And it's like we're creating
Really?
such a bigger gap now between the
Yeah.
educational process. Now, in my class itself, I use external links to try to help. I have there's a MobiMax program that develops the kids that have the low levels. And then there's a
Right.
Delta Math program that has the standards that the kids have to learn. And then there's a thing called an Ed Puzzle. It's me recording.
An ed puzzle?
Yeah, it's called Ed Puzzle. I record my lesson, filming me, how you see me right
Hmm.
now, being the goofball that I am, doing a lesson for the kids. They could rewind it, they could fast forward it, they answer questions. We have what they call CFUs, check for understandings. I,
Okay.
I pepper them throughout the episode so they know when to answer. And if I see that, okay, wait, 85% of my class got this question wrong, the next morning I come in and that's the mini lesson to start the class. So I'm
Okay.
okay. Well, a lot of you happen to be had a little hiccup on this one. Let's go over it. And I want to. Here's the common misconceptions and stuff. And sometimes I'll put that in the lesson. Sometimes I won't. But it's me. They see me, and they get to fast forward and rewind it, which was not an option before if they were in a live
Right.
class because it wasn't
Right.
recorded. So I have those, and that's what I got a whiteboard that's 12 by 12 on my wall right now over there. How I teach my lessons. So
Yeah.
all of that intertwined. I am delivering the instruction to the kids, but you know what? The attendance is even worse now than it was. It's weird because
Yeah.
you got to roll out of bed and go 5 feet and turn on your computer rather
Yeah.
than walk or drive to school, and you're not doing it. So
You
the
don't get
attend.
that same routine, which kind
Mm-mm.
of I find it has sort of an effect on the brain overall throughout your process of your day because there's not that structure there, right? Your
No.
structure is you get up, you
Mm-mm.
brush your teeth, you have breakfast, you shower, you get changed, you have your routine. But like you said, now you can just roll over and turn on a camera, and then with you not having to require that the cameras are on, do you even know that they're really there, right?
I
Are they
there
really?
there was I'll tell you two stories about that. They're actually really funny. The first story was I had a kid on the last period of the day on a Friday. They were in the class. Now, for some reason, I didn't turn my Teams meeting off. I just shut my laptop. I don't remember doing this. I shut my laptop. I went through my whole weekend. Monday came along. I opened my laptop up. The Teams meeting was still there. The student was still in the class from Friday last period. It
Must have
was
been an
hysterical,
entertaining weekend.
but it was hysterical. So um, my mic's usually muted by the time I get to that point anyway. But the point was, and the other story I have is this. It's interesting. I had a student approached me, was very cordial, very respectful. They said, "Listen, because of COVID, I have to work." I said, "Okay, well, what do you need from me?" Immediate first, the student was like, "Wait, what?" Like I was like, "What do you need from me? Do you need something from me? Do you need me to talk to somebody? Do you want me?" They said, "Okay, we have synchronous versus asynchronous, which are two words I didn't know existed before the pandemic. So synchronous is active learning, asynchronous the kids are working on their own. So
Right.
in the class, this student's class had synchronous days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They were asynchronous Thursday and Friday. Cool. They found a job that they could work 4 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, listen, pop in on the because you don't go to work till 4, but you know, I you can still come to class, but you're working those days. I understand.
Finessed it a little bit.
So I said,
Yeah.
okay, listen, pop in, say hello, wave, whatever you got to do. I'll mark you present, and then after. So then the student did that for like a month, and then afterward they
Mm-hmm.
weren't doing that on Thursday and Friday. And I said, is everything okay? Because that's how you gauge certain things. They're like, yeah,
Sure.
I switched my shift to the day, and I said, completely fine. You don't have to check in. I kept marking the student absent for those Thursdays and Fridays. But I
Right.
would put a note, and every time I marked them absent, that said, student at work, student at work. Administration comes up to me and says, this student has the X amount of absences. Now, we don't automatically fail in my district if you have this many absences. So the
Right.
student was just like, okay. They're like, I was like, yeah, I'm monitoring the situation. This student is working. They're helping out their family because COVID had one of the parents lost their jobs. So the student is actually working. And they're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for staying on top of that. We were just concerned because of the absences. Like, how's the student doing in class? I'm like, they have an 85. They're still doing the work on the 3 days they're there. So you
Yep.
have the dichotomy of kids where they'll turn on the
Sure.
computer and they'll stay there. They'll go play a game or something. And then you have the other kids that are helping out their families because of the pandemic and still trying to go to school, still trying to learn. So I mean, there's a total different another story that I had, but I think I'm chewing up. I'm just telling stories here. Student asked me a question. I just delivered the lesson, 5 minutes straight. Student asked me, what are we doing today? But in the background, they didn't know that I also own a PlayStation, and I know what the loading screen sounds like from a PlayStation. So the kid turns on their mic and says, hey, what are we learning today? What are we doing? And I can hear it in the background. I said, all right, first of all, turn off your PlayStation. And then one of their friends unmuted their mics and said, oh, he got you. Oh, he got you. Immediately muted the mic, and then I ended up talking to the student afterwards. I said, listen, I didn't mean to call you out with that, but you were on your PlayStation, weren't you? Yeah, I'm sorry, I was. I'm like, okay, come on. It's 5 minutes. You can give me 5 minutes.
But it's great that you have that relationship with them, that you can kind of like, get in your little razzing, and then they kind of, they get, they communicate with you back, and it's good that you've developed that rapport with them. I wanted to ask you just briefly, and then I'll go to some final questions, because I know your time is valuable and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
How has the pandemic changed things for you as a teacher in terms of the dynamics between you and other teachers and other instructors? How has it changed morale amongst staff, if at all? And what are some of the things that you're noticing, and how do you navigate that?
Well, by and large, like I said, the school that I teach in, the district I teach in, we have trouble with classroom management. Most of the teachers have trouble with classroom management. So by and large, a lot of teachers like being virtual. I mean, initially, you didn't have to go into work at all. So I was rolling out of my bed, going to my computer, making my coffee in the morning, teaching 5 classes from my house. Okay, it's not as effective as in classroom teaching, but this is the path we have to do. So that was an adjustment for the teachers. Now, a lot of the teachers that I knew were not tech savvy. They weren't immediately well-versed in how to do certain things technologically. If they were at the school on their computer, on their smartboard, I can take care of everything. However, developing new programs, finding new programs, trying to adjust to delivering things virtually to students from distance learning standpoint, they didn't know. So a lot of those teachers struggled. I had already been doing it, so it was something I just had to take to another level with the kids. So the morale has been pretty positive, because the stress of classroom management is down, but the stress of trying to reach the kids, trying to get your point across, trying to get them to actually do their work virtually is tough, and it's a grind. Yeah. So I think what's going to come out of this is two things. The bad thing is there's going to be more technological advances and things developed with the classroom that the kids can use, and teachers are going to be more well-versed to use those. The bad part is I think the gap from the learning perspective is going to be wider now, from kids that did have technological, that did have the technology, and kids that didn't have the technology. And I think that's the trouble that's going on right now. So from that standpoint, it's how do you go back? I mean, it's been really a full year.
That's the question. How do you? And do you go back, or do you continue forward in a different way?
I always thought that I always liked a block scheduling anyway, where the kids would have 4 classes on one day, 4 classes on a different day. So it would mix it up. It's a regimen, but it's a mix up. Now that's a scheduling thing. That's different from school to school. But what you could do, I think a lot of kids would be relieved, and a lot of teachers would be relieved to finally get back in, because that's why you taught. I can't imagine being a first-year teacher starting this year. I wouldn't know what to do. Like, everything I've learned up to this point was I'm going to stand in front of 30 kids, and I'm going to develop material. I'm going to develop plans. I'm going to do hands-on activities. None of that's available. So you have to try to be a little bit more savvy, be a little more. Some of the ones that are just like 5-10 years, they've grown up with that technological stuff, so they know how to use that accordingly with the classroom.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So just some final questions here for you. What are 2 things that you think are needed right now in the school system?
Oh, 2 things needed in the school system?
Yeah, that would make a difference for the learning experience for kids. What are 2 things that would make a difference?
How much time you got?
Get on
um, as far as I think you got to try to hire more teachers to reduce the class size
it.
because I had a teacher my third year of teaching, and I didn't know this, but I had over the amount of, which was 5 classes. I had 175 kids in 5 classes.
Wow.
It was well, the max was supposed to be 150. And I said, I was navigating it myself. I was, okay, this is what you got to give me. This you got to give me. And then my department head was like, listen, you could teach 30, you can't reach 30. You understand? So
Mm.
I thought it stuck with me for like 12 years now. So I'm sitting there, I'm going, okay, listen, if you reduce the class sizes, or if you want to have co-teachers in every class and split up the classes, that will work in and of itself. But when I see the smaller class sizes, I see those as more effective. So what do? You need more teachers. Well, how do you get more teachers? Well, you got to have the more people that actually want to go into the teaching profession. Now, 20, 30 years ago, it was a respectable profession. People, you told me you're a teacher, you were put somewhere, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
on not a pedestal, but you were well respected.
Upper
You
echelon of
now
career
you're people tell
status.
you when I tell people I'm a teacher, they're like, oh, okay, so we know you don't make any money, it's like I'm like, okay, all right, that's one thing to assume, but what you need, I think the technological advances, what COVID and what everything else has been going on right now, what it could teach you is this: you don't need to go 5 days a week. I
Mm.
think the benefit, what would benefit kids, what you could try to do from now here on out is that you have first half of the alphabet comes to school Mondays and Tuesdays, and they learn virtually Thursdays and Fridays. Because what else has been prevalent in the last 10 years? Online courses at college. So if these kids do want to go to colleges,
Yeah.
preparing them for an online course is something that they would need.
I'm
So
going to do my whole PhD online. You literally can do that now.
I know it's amazing. So that
Yeah.
development was you have the front of the alphabet come Mondays and Tuesdays, the end of the alphabet, or however you want to mix it up, and then
Right.
Wednesdays everyone's off.
Right.
Wednesday,
Okay.
the
Yeah. A
teachers can
break.
get their
Yeah.
rest, the kids can get their break, they can
Hmm.
readjust whatever they have to adjust. But the only problem is you have a certain number of days that you have to be there. That's 40 days you have to tack on. So they'll probably be going into July as far as the attendance goes, as far as
Right.
staying in class.
Into their
And we
summer.
understand.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think would improve everything is the standardized testing that they have right now
Hmm.
has to be adjusted for students that just don't grow up in a rural area. They have to be readjusted because it's completely
Sure.
unfair to a lot of the inner city kids that what they have to deal with, what they have to answer. So
Yeah.
they're not adjusted for that. So I would adjust the state standard testing,
Yeah.
make it make it universal. You have one math test that goes all around the states,
Sure.
and it's a universal math test. I'm in New York. We have a test where the kids have to do a multiple choice, free response, and then they have to do a proof. I go down to Virginia where I started teaching. The kids have a 50-question multiple choice test. Now you're telling me the kid in New York and the kid in Virginia have the same education?
Mm.
That's why people regard
Yeah.
certain states as better education than other states. If you want to try to
Right.
build up other states and build up the education system in this country, that's one of the things you have to try to do.
Yeah. And I assume the resources are quite different too in the inner city.
Oh
Where
yes,
you were like, it just
vastly different.
really.
I
Yeah.
have I have two youngsters in elementary school. They both have iPads with covers on them. I have students. I'm in the 39th week. They still don't have their laptops. How are they going to
Mm.
do their work if they don't have their laptops? I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Crazy. What do you love about teaching?
Um, the unpredictability of every day. If I had to go to a cubicle for the next 20, 30 years, if I live that long, I would not be appreciative of that. I love the fact that when you see that light bulb go on in a kid's head when they get it, that that takes away like 20, 30 bad days that you have teaching. I know that no 2 days are going to be the same. I love the ability to develop kids. I love the ability to try to build them up. Um,
Hmm.
I love the interaction of the students that I have and the staff because you're working together for a common goal. You don't know that the first day you walk in because it's always some brushback from the kids. But
Hmm.
you have this plan in place. You're here, I got to get you there. How do I get you there? oh wait, okay, in front of you I have your past grades, but that's not you. Let me talk to you, and now let's go on this journey together. Let me take you to this place.
Fresh
So
start.
that's what I love about it, about the teaching, is the fact that no 2 days are the same ever.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what's great about it.
That's awesome. What brings you joy?
What brings me joy? My three littles, my three minions.
Oh,
That would,
yeah.
you talking from a professional or personal standpoint?
Either or, either or.
Oh, yeah, my three minions bring me joy.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that I have right now.
They're cutie pies.
They are.
And my final question for you, sir, is what do you know for sure?
What do I know? That I'm probably not gonna be able to pay my taxes this year. That's all I know. No. What do I know for
So
sure?
poignant.
What do I, what do I know for sure? For sure that I tried a lot of things growing up. Being a dad and teaching are the two that I have without a doubt the most confidence that I'm doing. The two things that I have the most confidence in doing. So that's the only two things I'm really sure of. Other than that,
Yeah.
it's point, click, and shoot. Who knows?
Right, right, right. Yeah. So I think the major takeaway that I got from today is if you laugh together, you learn together.
Absolutely, no
And
question.
and I love that. Dante, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know your time is valuable and I'll let you go, but I've learned a lot. I could ask you 1,000 more questions about the school system and what you do, but thank you for helping us to understand how you sort of navigate the mental health piece with students now. And I know this is really going to help a lot of people, students and parents and teachers. So thanks so much for joining
Hey,
me.
Jenny, this was awesome. Anytime you wanna chop it up over teaching or anything else mental health related, I am here at your disposal. So just let me know.
Thanks so much.
All right,
Thanks you. Have a good night.
take it easy.
Oh, wait, I wanted to let you know too, sorry, that we'll post this on Instagram so
Okay,
people can review it and listen to it, so anybody that wasn't able to join.
awesome.
And was there anything that you wanted to mention, any like links or anything that you wanted to mention for anything that you have, or
No, I
people
got
can
really
connect with
nothing.
you?
Nothing on the
No?
horizon coming up. My page
Okay.
is, if you follow my Instagram, if you go to follow my Instagram, you're just going to see random videos of me working out. One thing that goes on
Who
as
wants to
well
see that?
as, no one does. As Jenny will tell you, one of the things that is strongly linked to mental health is physical health. So the better
That's
that
right.
you take care of yourself, the better your mental health status will be as well. So that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.